Hello, and again, hello. Again, always hello.
Always.
We're always glad to have you here.
안녕하세요.
Yes. And of course, we're talking today.
Konnichiwa.
Yes. Or we had some views from France, so.
Bonjour.
There you go. Now, today this is a very global issue, and today we're going to talk about a very global subject here. Of course, this is the fifth video on cybersecurity. This is the fourth theme, international security. Now, this is a topic that is truly near and dear to my heart. This is actually my major, is international relations, more specifically peace and security studies.
More specifically, something that will ever help them get a job.
Yes, for all of you out there that are considering majors, I had a lot of fun in this major. It was great. I learned a lot, met a lot of nice people, and it will never get me a good job. So just putting it out there right now, this is an excellent minor. Make your major something in science or mathematics or business. Just kind of putting that out there right now. But I had a lot of fun, and I'm hoping to apply some of that knowledge gained here today. Now, of course, the first thing we need to talk about is defining concepts of international security. Now, last time we talked about a lot of international security issues, but I kind of said, no, we'll leave the international part for later. We'll talk the domestic part. So now we're going to hear what they have to say about international security. Cyberspace has become essential to global economies, and particularly to international relations, most certainly. It is also a potential domain for conflict, as always. Many states and non-state actors, including proxies, are becoming threats to cyber international stability by developing and incorporating cyber capabilities. The attribution and verification of the source of disruption, the identity of an attacker, and the motivation can be difficult, especially in real time, and can be a serious risk factor that leads to misconception, misunderstanding, and uncontrolled escalation, leading to conflict in the real world. Our shared common interests and responsibility are to promote cyberspace as a trusted, stable, intercooperable, and open environment that supports economic and social development for all. Enhancing international cooperation is vital to establish consensus on what is considered to be appropriate behaviors by states in cyberspace, as well as to implement practical measures. Those measures can reduce the risk of conflict and build confidence. Now, before we talk about the objectives here, I'm going to share a little real-world anecdote so you can see how this plays out in real time.
All right, sing me a song.
Iran is a long-standing...
How long? Iran. How long?
Iran is a long-standing regional player in the Middle East. With the fall of Iraq from power dominance, Iran has really kind of started to fill that void, much to the disdain of their long-standing rival, Israel. Now, Iran, of course, is pursuing nuclear technology. Israel is believed to have already attained it. So the last thing Israel wants is to have to be on equal footing with Iran for obvious reasons. Iran is significantly larger, and better connected, that sort of thing. So they want to disrupt those plans to develop nuclear technology as much as possible. Well, Iran has their nuclear program suddenly attacked by some form of virus. Somebody got into their computer network they have there working on their nuclear program and destroyed a lot of their equipment, a lot of their data. The first thing they did, of course, was start blaming Israel. And not too long after that, a lot of incidents started happening with people of prominence in Israel suddenly turn up dead. And as soon as that happens, a lot of very important scientists in the nuclear program in Iran start turning up dead. So it's not hard to put two and two together. Things escalated quickly, especially since neither side wanted to talk about it. And of course, the UN would just leave it at, play nice, children. You know how that works. So this is a real world example. This is something that's happened very recently. And it's something that it starts out small. A cyber attack. Now, of course, data is lost, time is lost, money is lost. But to us, it's just like, okay, you can just rebuild it. But that escalates quickly, and suddenly lives are lost. There you go. We can build it, we can build stronger. Lives are lost, and lives are something you can't just rebuild or reconstruct. So that's a very real-world example of how these things can escalate out of control. Now, thankfully, it didn't go past that. But time will tell if that stays that way. Now, the objectives for the Seoul Cyber Conference on this issue are to identify strategies to ensure international stability in cyberspace, to prevent the unintentional escalation of future conflicts regionally and internationally, and to resolve cyber conflicts through reliable and peaceful methods. So, let's go into some of these discussion questions, shall we? First one, how can trust and transparency among nations be improved? What are the practical measures to enhance confidence, stability, and transparency in cyberspace?
But no, let's move on. Next one.
All right. So the very first thing that comes to mind, of course, is we're not going to trust each other.
Even sort of.
Even among allies, there's no trust. If we learned anything from these NSA leaks, I know the headlines are U.S. is spying on the UN, U.S. is spying on Germany. What you don't see is when you read down there at the bottom, and while they were spying, they found out that Germany was doing the same thing, and China was doing the same thing, and the UN was doing the same thing. No one trusts anybody. Everyone's a dirty scumbag. So therefore, you can't trust anybody because you don't even trust yourself. That is only going to be
Have you ever seen the show Survivor? Even your people you team up with, they're stabbing you in the back.
Running Man. Running Man. There is no allies in Running Man. Never. Trust Gary.
Ever.
So I know Gary's actually the one who probably gets screwed over the most.
That's probably because he screws other people over.
Yeah, too. But anyway, bringing it back on topic here. So because of that's countries that know each other. That's open relationships. On the internet, on cyberspace, it's even worse. There's anonymity. Not that word. No identity. You are identityless. Therefore, your attacks can be in secret. And this is, of course, going to cause even more issues. Like I said before, with that attack on Iran, everyone pretty much knows it was Israel, but there's no proof of it. Mm-hmm. In fact, they were blaming the U.S., saying, "Oh, the U.S. had to be behind it because their current government's big ploy to stay in power is we hate the U.S." So
wait, who?
Iran.
Oh, Iran.
So, there's no way to prove it came from the U.S. or Israel or anywhere else. But we can assume just because of their long-standing enemies. But, heck, it could just as easily have been, Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia's not too happy about Iran being a major power player now. Saudi Arabia kind of wanted to keep filling that role. So there's a billion different scenarios, and there's no way to prove it, and that's going to ruin trust even more.
Oh, heck yeah.
So a good first step, this is just from my perspective, is whenever these incidents happen, you need to allow the possibility for joint investigations. That's not going to satisfy everyone. Whenever the Chonan got sunk, we had 6 different countries come and verify, yeah, this is definitely North Korean torpedo. Yeah, North Korea definitely did it. And North Korea and China were still like, no, it wasn't them. South Korea blew themselves up. There's no way to please everybody. But just having an open avenue for joint investigation into major incidents is super important. And I think it's going to go a long way to build trust. A great example is China. China is very infamous for having these kind of cyber attacks originating from there. I don't believe they're all the Chinese government. The Chinese military has some of the largest numbers of cyber warfare units of any country in the world.
Yeah.
But a lot of these attacks are at places that you could very plausibly see criminals attacking. Heck, a lot of these attacks are on Chinese businesses themselves. I don't think Chinese government are practicing by attacking their businesses. But China's got that kind of reputation now for, they got a lot of cyber warriors, and they seem to be stirring up a lot of trouble. So a lot of people don't.
No place for a cyber warrior.
Yes. So a lot of people aren't really trusting China as a whole right now when it comes on the cyber front. A good way to build that trust is when these incidents happen, allow for joint investigation. Now, there's always going to be extenuating circumstances. If the attack is originating from military origin or defense origin, they're not going to let you investigate. But especially on attacks on civilian sectors and what they believe originates from civilian sectors, allow other countries to come in and do joint investigations and work together. That's going to build a lot of trust. I understand China has their own way of doing things when it comes to the internet. They're still under the Communist Party, and they have their own ways of defining what security is and what internet freedom is. And because of that, there's always going to cause conflicts, but they need to keep those kind of avenues open, and vice versa. Same here in South Korea. If an attack originates from South Korea into China, they need to be able to say, okay, we're going to investigate this, but China, if you want to send some delegates over and investigate it with us, you can do that, especially since it's, in that scenario, it'd be Chinese interests that were attacked. So, of course, they would want a hand in the investigation.
Me and my dark view of the world, I don't think that would work.
I don't think it's going to happen, but this is my policy suggestion. And this is coming from a realist. But this is my, if you want something on paper that in theory could help, I think this would be it. Is critical information infrastructure, such as ICT facilities and banking, energy, transportation, and water, a target for state-sponsored cyber attacks? And how does existing international law address these attacks on infrastructure? Answer the first question.
Okay, well, honestly, if you think about the most important things run by the internet, that right there was just a list of them. Yeah. No, what we're going to do is we're going to close on Facebook. We're going to get into your internet and we're going to shut down Facebook, and it'll just your country will just fall apart. Take that. Of course the banks are going to go after that. That's the money. With the water, yeah, cut off the water. You kind of need that. Yes. I mean, that's literally the first things you would attack through the internet.
I wholeheartedly agree. We were having this conversation before now. Heck, it goes back to Sun Tzu. This is 3,000 years ago. He was like, okay, what you want to do, you cut off their supply routes. You make sure they can't get new weapons. They can't get new folks in placements. They can't bring in food. And eventually, 1 second. And we're back. Speak of the devil, that was actually the Ministry of Foreign Affairs right there, reminding me that I have.
Ideas are stupid. They should always listen to me.
Oh wow! No, reminding me that I have an obligation to. I have a conference to go to tomorrow that I'll be covering. Okay, so as we were talking about before, you cut off those supply routes. You cut off their way of getting reinforcements, all that. In the modern age, it's hard to cut off supply routes. You got so many different roads and avenues. You'd have to take on all the airports and everything. A much simpler way of doing that is just to shut everything down.
Yeah.
Shut down the railroads, shut down their subways, shut down their banking. All the money dries up. Economy's in flux. People don't know what's going on. Everything disappears. That's how you do warfare.
Boom.
That's the very first thing I would do whenever the war kicks off. So trying to shut everything down so they don't know what's going on, especially communications. Gosh. So yes, they are a target. Yes, they are vulnerable. Yes, I do not think they're properly protected right now whatsoever. So going on to the second one, how does existing international law address these attacks on infrastructure? We were having this conversation before. There isn't adequate international laws for something that happens all the time, like natural disasters. Back to the Fukushima incident over in Japan. South Korea didn't have anything in place to properly respond. China didn't. The U.S. sort of did, but it still took them a while. Japan definitely didn't have anything domestically. There is no law set up right now for these kind of hits to infrastructure for something that happens all the time, like natural disasters, or even something that has the potential to be devastating that we know could happen, like a war. There isn't any. They're not prepared for that. What makes you think we're prepared for a theoretical devastating attack, like a cyber attack? There isn't anything in place. I'm telling you right. There isn't anything in place. Definitely nothing adequate enough for it. 3, what type of frameworks can be developed at regional and international levels to de-escalate and resolve state-to-state conflicts against threats and be applied to cyberspace? I again, just coming from my background, I don't have a lot of trust in institutions to fill this role. I know there's some institutions out there that are going, oh man, the UN totally got this covered. The UN does not have this covered. The UN, whenever these incidents would tick off, they would debate about it for a long time. They would make a decision. China would filibuster it. Russia would then side with China, and then the U.S. would call them out, and then China would call it the U.S. for something, and they'd just bicker back and forth, and nothing get resolved. Like every other major conflict resolution in this case. So no, I don't think the UN is a proper avenue for this. I think the most likely players, I'm not saying this is necessarily the best, but this is the most likely, is going to be major regional players that has special interest in seeing wars not being started. So for instance, a cyber attack comes from South Korea attacking Japan. Japan freaks out. The first person to step in and say, no war's clicking off here is going to be the U.S. U.S. got interest on both sides. They do not want to take sides in that war, in that theoretical war. They'd be the first ones to step in and say, no, cool your jets. Similarly, we had these attacks happen all the time from North Korea. It hasn't sparked off anything yet for a myriad of reasons. But a big one is, as soon as this stuff happens, the first 2 phone calls that get made are China to North Korea and U.S. to South Korea to say, no, cool your jets. Stop it. Knock it off, boys. They have interests in making sure war doesn't break out. They have a lot of potential money and allies that can be lost in the event of war. They don't want to see escalation. So I think the most likely players, the most likely avenues that are going to prevent these things from escalating are those kind of major players. Kind of the new bipolar structure, if you will, although it's more multi-structured than that, and especially Northeast Asia. But they kind of have their two-ish sides. Now, what are some additional things? First thing is communication. You see it happen in North Korea all the time. They'll do something and be like, give us money. We'll say, no, we don't want to give you money. And then they'll shut off communication. Well, heck. Now if we can't call you to say, hey, we're going to give you money now. it doesn't serve anybody by doing that, North Korea.
I was going to call you and tell you we changed our mind, but
somebody turned off the phone. Yeah, that's dumb. North Korea, knock it off. That's not helping anybody, especially not yourselves. Keep communication lines open. Now, there's not a lot policymakers can do. It's not like a policymaker can make a law, you are not allowed to shut down communications. Even if you did do that, the first thing the general is going to tell you is that, jog on, and he's going to shut the phone off. So I think we want to keep communication lines open. I don't think there's a lot policymakers can do. I think little things like joint military exercises. Obviously, North Korea doesn't want to play ball, but there's a lot of joint exercises going on between China and South Korea these days, between U.S. and China, Japan and South Korea. A lot more than you used to see. I mean, that kind of stuff never happened in the 60s and 70s, not even in the 80s, really. But you see a lot more of that going on. I remember the first time I read in the newspaper about a Chinese cadet being able to attend the South Korean military academy. That's pretty big news. I mean, that would never have happened, just a decade ago. So there's more joint stuff going on, and when there's more joint stuff going on, whenever stuff starts to escalate, there's going to be more people who say, no, I've worked with the Chinese cyber warfare team. I know what they're like. This doesn't really sound like them. Maybe we should cool our jets for a second. I think you're going to see a lot of... It sounds kind of odd, but the military soft power, basically militaries that know other militaries who have experience with other militaries are going to have a different way of viewing these situations, especially at the general level, your flag officers. So I think also that could be a potential avenue. So if we've got anything to add before you go on to the next one?
Nope, I think you covered
it. You can jump in anytime you feel a twinge here.
Okay, I'll go over and take a nap then.
Oh, thanks. Okay. Can some confidence-building measures or practical cooperation measures in the other contexts be developed and applied to international security issues in cyberspace? I would say yes. We were just talking about before, there isn't a plan now for another big disaster, but they're talking about it. They're talking about a lot more than they used to be.
Well, that's how we always are, is we don't think or talk about something until something happens.
There's a great article I want you guys to read, done by the Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs and Trade. I have it up on Facebook. I'll put the link here below it. And that's what he talks about. He talks about every major convention, whether it be the Hughes Pact, the Roerich Pact, the Geneva Convention, they all were made after bad stuff happened. They were like, oh, wow, we killed a lot of innocent people using mustard gas. It's gross. It's destructive. Maybe we should stop using it. It's always after an event. It's never before, and that probably needs to change.
What makes me mad about not just that, but what comes with it, and that's the people who always forget. Obviously you're a big history person, but
I love history.
If we don't learn from our history, we're doomed to repeat it. And people don't tend to remember that stuff, because a decade after something horrible happened and we learned from it and we changed something, people start complaining about it. Oh, why do we have this? Is stupid, blah 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 blah. It's like, well, obviously you forgot what happened.
Yes.
There's a reason why this is in play.
Yes.
9/11 and the whole airport thing. Everyone's complaining about the security and everything, and how this is stupid. I get searched. It takes me forever. Honestly, I would rather be delayed an hour than to go there and thinking it could happen again. So it's just like, I can put up with that as long as they're actually doing their job and not just delaying us because they can.
Yeah. So, like you said, not only is it important to be talking about this stuff and trying to get policy made before the incident, but there needs to be education on this kind of stuff. If you just make a policy that says, okay, here's our new policies for preventing major damage to infrastructure due to cyber attacks. They're going to say why. Why? There's going to be a lot of whys. You need to outline exactly why and what this is supposed to do. And there needs to be back and forth, too. If you implement policy that's too restrictive and that's just not helping matters, and it's tackling more of a theoretical threat than a more applicable one, then people have the right to complain. People have the right to say, okay, I don't think this is the right way to do it. And there needs to be back and forth on these particular issues. And those talks need to happen sooner rather than later. They said if we wait until after that big devastating attack, the one that wipes out our entire digital economy and everyone's money disappears overnight, I don't think that's the time to start talking about legislation. Okay.
They won't be able to because they'll not be able to turn the lights back on.
Exactly. But like we said before about other contexts, they're talking a lot more about disaster relief, humanitarian aid, and things like that. And they're putting more things in place. I think those can be transferred. So, for instance, we're starting to talk more about if a natural disaster does happen in Japan, China, how are we going to respond? Those institutions and those policies and that training, especially for the units that would have to be implementing this, can be applied to a similar kind of attack on infrastructure due to cyberspace. But we need to make sure policymakers are using the correct kind of language. The last thing we need is something that specifically says, in case of an earthquake, and then cyber attack happens in China, and people are left without power, and the entire infrastructure shuts down, and policymakers are like, oh, we can't send help because this says earthquake, not cyber attack. We don't want stupid stuff like that. Come on, use some common sense. Use some correct language in writing these policies. Think ahead.
Use the language in the good.
Yes, use English welly. Of course, these are probably written in Korean, not English. But
that's why I said use the language in the good, because that way you can use any language, not just English. Way to mess up the joke.
You're most certainly welcome. Now, of course, these are just my thoughts. Again, coming from a military guy, coming from a international relations studies guys. I want to hear what you guys think. Of course, we talked about the state. Most of the stakeholders we talked about today was at the state level. Your policymakers, your military, your defense levels. What about the lower levels? I want to hear from you guys. Talk a little. Talk a bit about your own thoughts on this, your own experiences with this. What are some countries you think that are doing it right? Some countries you think are not doing it quite as well. Who do you think has the best foot forward right now? Who do you think can take the lead on this? Because if China takes the lead, Japan is never going to sign off on it. If the U.S. takes the lead, China's never going to sign off on it. So who's supposed to take the lead in these kind of situations? I want to hear what you guys think.
Switzerland.
Yeah, right.
Australia.
Canada.
I'm just naming people that I don't think everyone hates.
Not yet. All right. Talk to you guys later. Bye.
Oh, Canada.